Welcome to the most must-see podcast in wrestling history. Welcome to Mark's Side of the Ring. Our views, our predictions, spoiler-free on all things AEW and WWE. I am your main Mark, Miguel Minetti, alongside, again, just one of my two co-hosts, Fred DeCourt. What's going on, bro?
What's happening, Miguel? How are you?
I'm doing well, buddy. Looks like our other friend here, Big Nick, he's unfortunately out again for this week, but hopefully he'll be back next week. So we got the two-man booth rocking and rolling again this week. I'm excited and pumped up about today's show, bud, and I hope you are as well.
Oh, yeah, always. A little wrestling.
Absolutely. We got a jam-packed show for you guys today, so we're just going to kind of jump right on into things. Obviously, Fred, I want to kind of address probably what I would consider one of maybe two of the biggest topics since the last time we recorded here. And we'll kick it off with what happened on Friday night on Smackdown. So as you saw, Smackdown being another phenomenal show, as it's been for quite some time now. Continuing the story with Roman Reigns, Cesaro, and to throw a monkey wrench in it, Daniel Bryan returned this past Friday night on SmackDown. For those of you that didn't get a chance to see the episode yet, Daniel Bryan throughout the entire episode was advocating for Cesaro to get his title shot, saying that he had earned it by defeating Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. He had rightfully gotten the chance now to be named as the number one contender. And at the very end of the night, Roman Reigns came out with Cesaro and Daniel Bryan in the ring and basically challenged Daniel Bryan for another title opportunity. However, this time, Roman Reigns put the caveat that if Daniel Bryan loses, or in Roman's words, when he loses, Daniel Bryan will be banished from SmackDown forever. So, Fred, I want to get your thoughts on this, and the reason I'm kind of bringing this up first is because there's been some scuttlebutt, I guess we'll call it, about Daniel Bryan wanting to take some time off, as well as I'd read in the dirt sheets that he's interested in maybe exploring some other options and either going part-time or potentially working for a new company when his contract expires this upcoming September. So what did you make of all this when you were watching SmackDown, knowing what you know about what we've been reading in the dirt sheets these last couple of weeks?
Yeah, well, first things first, I was surprised that they announced it for SmackDown this coming Friday when, because it would have been, up in the air. Would it be Roman Cesaro at Backlash? Would it not? Who would it be? So then I saw him challenge Bryan, and I'm like, oh, okay, they're going to do Bryan Roman one-on-one again at Backlash, and it would. But then no, so SmackDown. So I was surprised that it's happening this quickly. As far as the stipulation, that didn't really surprise me because we've been reading all these reports about Bryan going part-time. And then, him even saying that he'd like to work in other companies. He had made it sound like he wanted to work in other companies while still working with WWE, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't see that happening. But I don't think Bryan even cares about, like, not necessarily AEW or, Impact, whatever. He may even want to just wrestle like independent shows, like when they start up again. Some have, so but say PWG. Maybe he'll be able to do. Who knows? But I definitely think he's on the back end of his career, obviously, and he apparently wants to go part time. Maybe this is a way to write him off of television for the time being. I could definitely see him back by SummerSlam. Him going part-time, listen, I get it. He's a man now with 2 children. His wife is at home. I mean, she's busy with other companies, that her and her sister have. But, it makes all sense in the world to want to be home more, especially while his children are so young. And if he has the financial capability to do that, then why not,
There's a lot of what you said I want to unpack here. And I want to start off by asking, would you be genuinely shocked if he did go to AEW once his contract expired?
I would.
I just can't see that. Honestly, I can't see. The reason I'm asking, I'll now let you speak in a second.
Yeah.
I just can't see that happening, right? I don't think that from a financial standpoint, I don't think there's any amount of money that Vince McMahon would turn him down for, right, to allow him to go to the competitors. So if he were to go there, it would not have to be a financial reason because I think Vince could compete any dollar amount-wise with Tony Khan on this.
No, I agree. Vince, I don't think will let Bryan go. I mean, ever since Big Show went, sure, I'll say anything can happen, but that was a different situation. They were done with Big Show, basically put him out to pasture, and he wanted to do more. With Daniel Bryan, it's kind of the other way around. He's the one that kind of wants to wrap it up, and WWE is still implementing him in the main events and the biggest main event of the year, the main event of WrestleMania. So they're not obviously done with him, which I'm happy about. But yeah, could I see him wrestling in other places? Yeah, I can. And to be honest with you, I was surprised that he didn't try to either get out of his WWE contract or when it had expired before he was cleared to compete again, that he didn't try and wrestle on the indies. Because Bryan didn't really, he doesn't care about the fame or being in WWE. He just cares about wrestling. He's even said it could be in front of 5 people at a flea market. He just loves to wrestle.
Sure, yeah.
So, I was kind of surprised that he didn't take that risk with his career, with his neck, before WWE cleared him and went elsewhere. So if he didn't do it then, I don't see him doing something like that now. But again, like I said before, I wouldn't be surprised if WWE allows it, to see him on some independent shows, maybe as like a special attraction. But
yeah,
it still would be crazy. It would still be a huge precedent, for WWE to allow even that. But never say never.
Well, and you said something else a little bit earlier that I wanted to address too, about the fact that he's got a family, right? He's got two daughters at home and a wife. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to his wife, though, we've also been reading a lot of reports that the Bella twins want to come back to action, right? For at least one final run, especially because it wasn't until after they both retired that the women's tag team division started, with the tag team championships, I should say. So, I mean, there's a lot to kind of throw in there, right? Because if it is true that the Bellas in some capacity want to come back, obviously we know they just went to the Hall of Fame, right? But not to say that you can't go in the Hall of Fame, because obviously people have done it, right? The Hall of Famers come back full time, right? Edge is just a perfect example of that. Yeah. But how would it work? Maybe there's a possibility, and I want to ask you this: could the roles reverse, where maybe Daniel Bryan becomes a stay-at-home dad for a little bit to allow Brie and Nikki to do that one final run, right?
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That could be the other thing too. Yeah, that's a great point. Maybe that we saw them tease them, with Bayley at WrestleMania. Right. Not even to say that they're going to feud with Bayley and whoever, but they teased doing something. And yes, they have said that. I don't know about Nikki's had that. I don't know if it was some kind of issue with her brain. She had some kind of like cyst on her brain, and that kind of ended her career. But now there is talk that she may be okay to go. And yeah, they have said that they want to do one more run. They want those women's tag team titles. They were, in fact, a couple years ago when they first introduced them, the Bellas were supposed to start a feud with the Iconics, who had just won them at WrestleMania. They were supposed to start it on that Smackdown. And then that's when Nikki found out about the cyst and she wasn't cleared. So that never came to fruition, but maybe now it can. And that would make perfect sense that Bryan now will go home and stay with the kids and she comes back. I could see that happening for sure.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's the direction they're going to go, but, it's certainly a possibility, right?
Right.
Kind of bringing it back to Daniel Bryan's career, right? You had said that he is obviously on the back end of his career. It's crazy to think that, right? Because, part of it is obviously he was out of the ring, unfortunately, for I think it was a period of 2 years or 3 years when he had to return.
Yeah, pretty much 2 years. I mean, but really 3. He only came back in 15 for like 3-4 months.
Right, he came, but right, exactly, right. So, and when he first won the title at WrestleMania 30, I remember he was injured, and then came back 15. So he hasn't had the most luck, right, in his career. I mean, obviously he's a massive star, and that's why my point earlier I was saying that this would be an absolute shocker if he were to go to AEW, because I just don't think Vince McMahon would allow that to ever happen, right, financially. So it would have to be something that's not a financial decision. But, it's crazy to think that he is at the tail end of his career, because he has been in WWE for almost, I think, 11 years now, right? I think he started in 2010, right?
Yeah.
February 2010 when he was on the original NXT show.
Right.
In season 1 when it used to be a competition show. And now we're in basically May of 2021. We're going on, or a little more than 11 years now. And, you shave off that 2.5, 3 years, he's still been almost full time for 8 years in WWE. But
Yeah.
it's just crazy to think because he's had such a good career, but he doesn't strike me as someone that, I don't know, just maybe because of the fact that he was on and off so many times, he doesn't strike me as someone that I would think would want to move on to other things, right? But obviously that's the case. So,
Yeah.
it's interesting to say and to think for him, like, he may actually be calling it quits or going super part-time. Now, and that's another thing too, right? When he says part-time, well, what are we talking about? Are we talking Brock Lesnar part-time, where he wrestles 4 times a year? Are we talking The Rock part-time, where he wrestles once every 3 years? I mean, it's crazy to think how many different avenues this could be. But, I guess I'm very curious to see how it ends on Friday, right? Because I think people like us, right, that really know WWE, right? We watch a lot of wrestling. We're big fans. I think a lot of us are expecting Daniel Bryan to lose on Friday, but I don't know, maybe a disqualification happens and they push it out to Backlash, right? I think there's still a lot of question marks here, but it's a very interesting topic in my opinion.
Yeah, that could happen. We could see some kind of BS finish leading to another match at Backlash. And as far as the part-time thing goes, I have the feeling that it's going to be a progressive thing. It's going to start like less over the course of the next few years and whatnot,
Right.
Because he has said he wants to wrestle forever. He wants to wrestle when he's 90, So I don't see him ending. Like even if I could see him if his body is able to in 20 years still having like a match. Like if if he's able to, he definitely would want to from what he said.
Yeah, and I think the craziest part about him saying he wants to go part-time, which obviously is his decision, is that I remember reading so much that when he was laid up, right, in 2015 or 16 when he had to retire, I mean, his sole mission from day one, and anyone that watched Total Divas or Total Bellas, you would see it on camera that he was so adamant about wanting to get back in the ring, right? And I think he, suffered from some sort of mild type of depression, right, not being in the ring. It's just crazy to read those articles, which, honestly, he's never, I don't know, maybe it's not even true, but I don't know. It blows my mind to think that he actually wants to go part-time.
I know, it's strange. You would almost think like after he got back what nobody thought he would, that he would never want to give it up at all, but maybe having, another child change that for him.
Yeah.
Again, not to say that he wants to retire completely, but that he does want to slow it down. But it is interesting, really, coming from, who it's coming from, Yeah.
So Friday will definitely, nevertheless, be a very interesting episode and must-see episode of Friday Night SmackDown. And, I want to make one more point that I said earlier about SmackDown. Man, they've just been hitting home runs lately, right? I really don't know. I think it was you. It was either you I was texting or my brother, who's a big fan and watches the show as well. That how in the hell do the same company produce Raw and SmackDown? I mean, we're talking.
It's remarkable.
It's 2 different universes, right? I mean, I watched Raw this past Monday, and it wasn't a complete cluster F, but there were so many times where I'm like, man, this show is not great. Right? Whereas SmackDown, I mean, like, I just feel like, and I know it's an hour shorter, right? But I just feel like it flies by. Right? Do you get that feeling every week when you watch SmackDown?
Oh, 100%. And, the hour makes a huge difference. But here, and it does. And I won't take that away from the fact, that makes a big difference. But I don't feel at the end, by 10 o'clock on Monday night, that it's been an amazing show that has flown.
Exactly.
So you can only use that so much. It is a factor, but they're not killing. It's not like they're killing it from 8 to 10, or it's not like they're killing it from 9 to 11, or whatever. Hell, I don't even think they're killing it in an hour span on any of the 3 hours. It has its moments, but just that, moments. And listen, you're not going to get a banger 3 hour every week. I'm not expecting that.
Right.
But I am expecting a little more than what we're getting on Monday nights. I'm not asking for a lot here, but they're doing it on Friday, so we got to be happy for that, I guess.
And I think part of it is, obviously it's no secret that, and I've said this many times on this show here, SmackDown is clearly their Raw now, right? It's clearly
yeah. But it's funny. I still can't, as good as SmackDown is, and I know it's the A show, I still can't get. Monday night is still Monday night for me. And I wish I could mentally get rid of that, but I still can't view SmackDown as bigger than Raw, even though I know it is. And it's a by far better show, but I still think more all day about Monday night, like, oh, tonight's Raw, than I do, oh, tonight's SmackDown. Even though I know SmackDown's going to be a way better show, I still, part of me gets more excited for Mondays, and then I'm more disappointed at the end. But I don't know if that'll ever go away.
I have this theory that if the shows were reversed in their time slots, right? If SmackDown was on Mondays and Raw was on Fridays, with the content that they're putting out weekly, I don't think there would be as many WWE detractors as there are. Right?
I don't think so either. Yeah, I think because if the problem with Fridays is just that it's Fridays.
Right.
And especially going into the summer, it's only going to be worse. People's main focus on a Friday night isn't going to be to watch wrestling.
Right.
I mean, I'm a huge fan, and I even miss it on Fridays. I'll record it and watch it either. If I go out, I'll watch it when I get home and finish it on Saturday, or just watch it all Saturday morning. But regardless, I'm even willing to miss it, and I won't miss a Monday Night Raw. And SmackDown is 10,000 times better. Right. So it's just, if SmackDown was on Monday, forget about it. And nobody would even, I still feel like people put so much focus on Raw being so bad that they're not giving any acknowledgement to SmackDown being so good, because everybody's basing on what's going on because of what's happening on Raw. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree with you. 100%.
So, yeah, I think a lot of people feel like I do. They still consider Monday, wrestling night.
Well, as Roman Reigns would say, people need to start acknowledging me on Friday night SmackDowns, because it's
clearly the bigger show.
It really is the A show.
If whatever show Roman is on, that's the bigger show. It's just like back in the day with John Cena. John Cena was on Raw for like 10 years. You knew Raw was the bigger show.
Yeah.
And that's not to say they're not going to put big names. Like, Taker was always on SmackDown. He was like a constant. Edge was on. So they provided big names, to try and pop ratings. But whoever the flag bearer was, whatever show he's on, that's the show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as you mentioned, coming into the summer now, right, things are going to be a little bit maybe even tighter for SmackDown. But I think besides just the summer, thankfully, things are starting to finally open back up, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that brings me to my next topic that I want to discuss with you. Did you get a chance? Now, I know we don't normally talk about MMA on here, but did you see some of the visuals for the UFC pay-per-view last Saturday?
It was beautiful.
I mean, I think, which was really cool to see. I think a lot of the wrestlers from AEW and WWE were there, which is pretty nice to see.
Right.
AR was there. Dr. Britt Baker was there. Karrion Kross was there. Sammy Guevara was there. I saw a ton of people from both.
Yeah, it was interesting that Kross and Scarlett were there. I know, a lot of the AEW people, because of the Jacksonville Connect, obviously,
right.
With Tony Khan and them. But it was cool that Karrion and Scarlett were there. I don't know how that came to be, but yeah, it was a place to be on Saturday night for sure.
Yeah, and what a sight it was, right? I mean, just to see a full house,
it was insane.
Full capacity inside. It just makes me very hopeful, and obviously praying that everything went okay with it, right?
Yeah.
With COVID, but barring any setbacks from that, it just goes to show that we really are rounding the corner here. We're getting some fans back, and I can wait for that.
Oh, me too. And I wish Vince was as reckless as, or I don't want to use the word reckless, but as
daring
as Dana White. And here's the thing: 15, 20 years ago, Vince would have done that. You would, but times change, people change, the world's different. They're looking at their company, from different set of eyes than they did years ago. If this was years ago, though, Vince would have been doing the same exact stuff that Dana White's doing. Dana White just is not that point yet where, he has to care about, not that he doesn't have to care about sponsors and all that, but, he hasn't caught as much flack as WWE has over the years. So they're not fighting as much for image damage control as WWE, and it's funny because like Dana has said that he's modeled himself after Vince McMahon and admires Vince and his business, acumen. So I do think that Vince and WWE would have had packed live shows already if it wasn't 2021. But
yeah, and I think so too. But I think the good news is that like I mentioned earlier, it's definitely happening sooner rather than later, right? Which will kind of bring me to my next point, that obviously it looks like SummerSlam is the target for not just return of fans, but consistent return of fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know we kind of touched on this a little bit last week, but the more and more news that's coming out, I want to ask you, Fred, even though SummerSlam's your second biggest show, SummerSlam's at the end of August, right? If things are starting to get better in a perfect world, do you make that judgment call, that pivot to say, you know what, let's just start it in June? Let's just start it in July? Or do you wait till August still for SummerSlam? Because I'm sorry, I'm going to let you talk in a second, but that Vince is all about those big moments, right? WrestleMania was that big moment. So now there's no bigger moment besides WrestleMania than there is SummerSlam, right? So I could see where he's going with this, but do we really want to, if need be, it's basically, let's call it May 1st now, we have June, July, we have 3.5 months still to SummerSlam. I mean, would you, if you were at the helms of WWE and making these booking decisions, would you pivot if things were starting to get better?
I mean, here's the thing. On one hand, I would love them to start tomorrow, obviously. But at this point, I feel like it would be lackluster, even though they already had Mania, so that was as big as it was going to get as far as coming back. So it wouldn't be as a big of a deal now, say if they just started up with a random Raw, that if they didn't do Mania. But I still think SummerSlam makes sense. You had limited fans for WrestleMania. Now your next biggest show, fans are back, and now we're back. So, and don't forget also, they have the lease at the Yuengling Center for the Thunderdome through the end of July.
Right.
Absolutely. So at that point, now you're looking at basically a month only that they would be able to have before. Now, I don't know what they're going to do between the end of July and SummerSlam. That I don't know if they're going to maybe extend at Yuengling Center, go somewhere else for a month, or maybe they will start touring a month before SummerSlam. Who knows? I did read that today that they want to run some test live events in the summer, so we'll see what happens with that.
Right. You get behind that.
Hopefully they're in our area, but we'll see. I am very curious to see if SummerSlam is indeed going to be the first, where SummerSlam's going to be, the capacity, what they do going forward. Will it just be Raws and Smackdowns? Will it include house show? There's a lot that I'm waiting to hear, but it's going to be an interesting summer and a big time SummerSlam.
So why can't, in the meantime, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, why can't WWE in the Yuengling Center do what the CWC has done and not add a few fans in there? I think they can, right?
Yeah, I wish I had an answer. I really don't know. I do know that that WWE has said that they didn't want like just limited fans, like AEW's doing, because they didn't like the way that looked. Right. Granted, they did it at WrestleMania, but that was a huger building. You know what I mean? It didn't. You still have 25,000. It's going to look different. Not even with the cutout, even without the cutouts. I mean, it still looked more packed than if you were to do an arena that could fit 10 to 15 and have 1,000 to 1,500 in there. Right. It's going to look more spread out. So I know they didn't want to do that, but why they can't implement the virtual with real fans, I don't know. I wish they would. I think it would enhance it, because I think the Capitol Wrestling Center, it looks great.
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. At this point, I think those are real fans, right? I think they're 100%.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Well, I mean, yeah, they're not like selling tickets. Like it's not like Mania where like just anybody can go. It is still invite, like they've been doing since the start, but they increased the amount of invite only that they're doing. They've added, I don't know the exact amount of fans that were there then and or now, but it's still invite only, but they increased it, I think, starting at stand and deliver.
Yeah, I saw stand and deliver that they had that extra section in the back there, which was pretty cool. So hopefully fans return sooner rather than later. I know we've been kind of aching for this, we'll call it, for the last year and change.
It's hard, especially I rewatched the the WrestleMania show and seeing it with fans, and then to go back, it's almost made it worse because now just from those 2 days, and especially being there and feeling that excitement and seeing that energy, when you started to get used to the Thunderdome,
right?
And then we got spoiled for 2 days, and now it's like back to the beginning of like, oh, this shit again, So it's it's kind of hard to get back into the getting used to the Thunderdome, but it's going to be the foreseeable future for the next few months. So
yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, I feel like SmackDown, even though it's the Thunderdome, it flies by even with the no fans. But
yeah,
Raw would benefit for some human being.
Raw would benefit if there was a pulse in the building, if anybody had one, including the head announcer.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. I mean, we could spend some time on Adnan Burke versus Pat McAfee again, but I know we.
Pat McAfee. I know we commended him. I believe it was last week on the podcast for him. But I mean, another SmackDown in the books for him. Second one, another great week for him.
Yeah, he's a slam dunk. WWE made the right decision with him. We'll spend a quick second or two on Adnan Burke, but man, this is what, 3 Raws now for him. He's been the shits.
Something like that. Well, we're gonna need a bigger boat. I know that. I don't know what that has to do with the Strowman Express, trains, planes, automobiles. I don't know, but he thought it was a good line.
Yeah, he's just not. You know what it is too? He's not connecting. Like I don't know if he's a fan or was a fan. I have to imagine he's some sort of fan, but for a guy that has broadcasting skills, it sounds like he gets even a little flustered with what I'm sure is Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn is ear 24/7. I don't know if you listen to Busted Open Radio, but Bully Ray was just talking about it on the podcast the other day. He's saying that I'm sure he's being overwhelmed. One ear is Vince McMahon, the other ear is Kevin Dunn, right? And they're just feeding him lines, and he can't take it. Well, it sounds on there he's a little flustered, at least compared to Pat McAfee. So.
Oh, I'm sure. And something tells me Pat doesn't have as many people in his ear. I think they're giving Pat a lot of freeway, but he has he's a color guy, right? So he does have more freedom. The head play-by-play, they have a lot of responsibility. It's a completely different job, in all fairness to Adnan.
Absolutely.
But, and I don't think they're going to yell at Pat McAfee either, or at least that much. Right? Although they did yell at him about wearing shorts at the WrestleMania pre-show a couple years ago, so who the hell knows?
Michael Cole was hot at that.
Yeah. That's a great story. But
you can catch that story. McAfee put it on YouTube one time. I watched it. And then Cole made up eventually, but Cole was apparently really hot at him because showing up in shorts.
They went to Vince and said LeBron James just wore it at something. I don't know what it was, the ESPYs or it was something. And Vince said, "Damn, all right, it's good." So then it was all right, but Michael Cole was ready to kill him. But yeah. So anyway, maybe they do yell at him, but he doesn't need to get yelled at right now. Anyway, in my opinion. Yeah, so it's a hard job. I've heard many people say it's a very hard job, and it's only gotten harder. Vince apparently produces in your ear more now than he ever used to. Plus, there's so many things they got to promote. It's a hard job. JR has even said he wouldn't be able to do that job today. He commends Michael Cole, all the time, for doing such a great job with everything. Really, you're navigating a lot. You're basically like a traffic director. I mean, you're all over the place.
Yeah.
So it's a hard job, but it doesn't mean he's the right man for it either. I mean, to throw a guy with no experience onto Monday Night Raw like that is a little crazy if you ask me. I mean, look how long it took Michael Cole to get onto Raw.
It's true.
Yeah. But
they have trust in this guy, but hopefully, in due time, he'll start to pick up some of those cues for being on Raw.
Hopefully.
But I want to ask you next. I know you're not a big AEW guy, but I'm sure you've been reading and hearing the chatter that this time next week, well, I should say, when this will air on Saturday. So the upcoming Wednesday after this airs is going to be AEW's big Blood and Guts show.
Right.
That was supposed to happen right before the pandemic. It was actually supposed to be in Newark.
Yeah, I was supposed to go.
I was supposed to go too. Yeah, I don't think we were supposed to go together though, right? I think we were going with different people, right, or something.
Right. Yeah. My friend Adam got him through work or something. Then it got postponed, and I think it's technically still postponed. I think the date now is in September.
Yeah. Well,
And that could happen because apparently AEW is going to start touring again in July.
Yeah. So, but nevertheless, they're doing their Blood and Guts big show next week. So, again, I know you've made it very clear on here that you're not really a fan, but you gonna check out the show next week?
Being that NXT is not on Wednesdays anymore, I probably will check that out. I haven't watched AEW since the move. I thought maybe I would, but I was like, you know what? I watch wrestling 3 nights a week, and then other old stuff in between. I was like, I'm going to take a break on Wednesday, but I am going to check that out. I think because that's going to be a big match, and
I think that's the whole show. I heard.
Oh, really?
I don't know. I don't know if I heard that right, but I thought I read something that's the only match for the night. But
I mean, it makes sense being that it's the 2 rings. Maybe they don't want to, but that's interesting. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
that's 2 hours though. I mean, I could see the last hour of the show or something, but wow, I'll be interested to see how that goes.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see. But should be a good show nevertheless. Now, obviously, I said at the beginning of the show we had 2 very big topics. I wanted to put one at the beginning of the show of Daniel Bryan. Now, our last topic, which also was probably the biggest news of the week, that happened behind the scenes, is the whole garbage. What are we calling it? Trashgate?
Trashgate. Yeah, they're calling it.
And for those of you that don't know what I'm referring to, Mickie James, about a week ago when she was released from her contract, her tenure with WWE, posted a photo that she received her personal belongings in a massive trash bag with a sticky note that just said Mickie on it, which was terrible. Certainly terrible terrible way to end your career with the company that you've given all to. Fast forward, and she did put it on social media and tagged, I think, WWE and Vince McMahon on it. Fast forward a few days after that, Triple H and Stephanie personally each went onto Twitter to respond to Mickie, saying that they were appalled about what had happened, and the individuals that were responsible for these efforts are no longer employed by WWE. In one of them, which we heard, was Mark Carrano, which was head of talent relations at one point. What were your thoughts when this first broke?
I was, first of all, I was upset that Mickie got released, and then to see her receive her items like that, it's trashy, no pun intended. I mean, and I was surprised, but at the same time, part of me wasn't, because we've heard things about, talent relations and the way some people are treated and, what's true and what's not true. But apparently Mark Carrano was not a fan favorite backstage by many people. And it's amazing that he's held that job that long. And I remember even seeing him on Total Divas, that was really that was the first time I ever even heard of him. But apparently he's been there for almost 20 years. But I guess he had gained more power over time, obviously. And I remember even thinking, like, this guy just seems like an asshole. Like, I just get like asshole vibes from him.
Well, we saw him at WrestleMania. Remember, at the hotel a couple times.
Yeah, and I remember saying to you, look at him. He's dressed like a schmuck. Because he's a high level executive, and here he's in shorts, and a t-shirt. I think he had a baseball cap. I mean, I'm wearing one right now, but he had. I'm like, what the hell is it? Like, little did I know. I bet you he's been on the way out, and I heard. Now what I've heard, it was said like a month or two ago that John Laurinaitis got his role back.
Right.
So apparently when that happened, this really took away a lot of Mark Carrano's job responsibilities. So I think he knew this was maybe coming, and I'm curious if he got let go before the whole issue with Mickie James happened or not, because the way Triple H and Stephanie worded it, saying that person is no longer here, I don't know if that meant that they got rid of him already, and that guy that he's not here anymore now, or if he got let go because of that. It's not really clear. Some people just automatically assume, well, he got let go because of that, but he may have been let go already, and they were just saying that person's not here anymore.
What's interesting is, and like I mentioned, unfortunately Nick couldn't be here tonight, but when we were talking about this with Nick in our group chat, right, the three of us have with Big Time Tim, he's in it too. Shout out Shark Bets and Fancy Sets. Nick had said that there's no way, he doesn't believe that there's no way that Triple H Stephanie didn't know about this, because apparently the first time it happened was when Jillian Hall was fired, right, in 2005 or something like that she received her belongings in a trash bag, and that was 16 years ago.
Right.
So what do you make of that? Do you think there's a way that Triple H and Stephanie knew?
They could have, but they also could have not, because there's so much going on. I think the last thing that they're thinking of, about, unless somebody personally went to them and told them this happened, like Mickie James did over Twitter, I don't think they would know, because they weren't the ones doing it. There's, like I said, there's so much going on there. Not everybody knows what everybody's doing or what's going on. It's impossible to do that with a company as large as WWE is. So I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't know. I really wouldn't. And I'd like to think that they wouldn't accept that. They obviously did now. I mean, they had no choice, to go on Twitter and say something, because it looked so bad. But I don't think that they would have let that go if they knew about it. I really don't.
I hope they didn't know. And I don't think they did either, right? I think we were arguing, or at least I was, with Nick, saying that, I mean, to your point, there's such high-level executives at this point. You don't always know what happens with people beneath you are doing, what I should say, right?
Exactly.
Term, but
that's why they have talent relations. They handle that stuff. This way, they don't have to.
But nevertheless, it was certainly justice for not just Mickie James, for anyone else that it's happened to in the past. And if anything, hopefully this stops it from ever happening again, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody should have to get their personal belongings in a trash bag.
And maybe this is a good thing to come, just in general, like not having him, if he's a poison back there that he's been claimed to be, then this is just good in general for the morale and the betterment of the superstars backstage. If this guy is as bad as people are making him to be,
I want to ask you, where do you think Mickie James goes from here? Right, I think there's a lot of question marks with the pool that were released 2 weeks ago with Samoa Joe and the Iconics, among Chelsea Green, amongst a few others. But Mickie James, right? She's probably at the tail end of her career.
Right.
You see her being wanted by AEW? Do you think she joins her husband in NWA? Do you think she goes back to Impact, where she had a solid run over there? I mean, she's got a lot of choices to go to.
Yeah, I think it's going to be up to her, to be honest with you. I think she'll go wherever she wants to go. I think they'll all be interested in her. I'd be shocked if they didn't. She's got great knowledge that she could pass on to the younger women. She still can go. She still looks great. I mean, she's got all these qualifications. She meets them all. Any company would be stupid to not want to hire her. And personally, and this is coming from me, I think it was stupid by WWE to let her go. Even if they didn't want her as an in-ring competitor, the knowledge that she could bestowed upon the roster in maybe a producer role, or she was testing out doing some, she did the pre-show stuff for TakeOver Stand and Deliver. I know she had been commenting when she was recovering from her injury a while back. She was commenting on Main Event for a while. I could have seen her doing something at the Performance Center for sure. I'm surprised WWE let her go. That was but I was surprised by a lot of these releases. There's other ones that I'm like, oh, that makes sense. This roster cut was a bad move, in my opinion, for whatever it's worth, for quite a few of the folks that they let go. But Mickie at the top of the list. That knowledge, you can't buy that, you know.
I think it's safe to say that over the years, when WWE has released its, I hate to use the word spring cleaning, but it is that's exactly what it is. This to me might be the most shocking overall group of people ever cut ever.
I would agree.
And the interesting thing is that they're all on their 90-day no compete now. But July 14th, I think, I could be wrong, falls on a Wednesday, which, as we know, is AEW Dynamite, right?
So that could be an interesting Wednesday.
I wouldn't be right, exactly. I wouldn't be surprised to see a few, if not maybe all of them, show up on Dynamite, just as a ploy, because Khan's obviously in bed with a few of these other promotions, right? We just saw Kenny Omega win the Impact World title this past Sunday. So now he's not just the AEW World Champion, he's the Impact World Champion, right? We see Thunder Rosa, who's in NWA. I think she was the NWA Women's Champion for quite some time. She's been on Dynamite. So Khan has these relationships with multiple different wrestling companies out there, right? And, he had Matt Cardona, formerly Zack Ryder, on Dynamite a few weeks as a test before he signed full-time to Impact. I could see all these people being on Dynamite, dude.
And now with Impact and Dynamite working together, or Impact and AEW, I should say, anything could happen. So, they're going somewhere, all of them. But I will say this now: I will not be surprised if Peyton Royce and Billy Kay are back in WWE within the next 5 years.
You think so? You think out of all the talent that was released, it's them first?
They have to be. They're still young in their career. They're still talented. Like Samoa Joe, like I wouldn't be surprised if he came back either. But he's probably at closer, obviously, to the end of his career than the beginning. So that I could see maybe not happening. Same with Mickie James. She may have had her last run, and that's fine. She'll go into the Hall of Fame in 10 years, whatever. So she may have had her last match in WWE, but yeah, I definitely think Peyton and Billy, those two, they have to come back at some point. I can't even wrap my head around why they split them up if they had no plans to go with them in singles directions, and why they didn't put them back together when they obviously easily could have, because neither was really doing much, and they put Billy with Carmella anyway, which I wasn't against that, but I was just like, they could have just put the Iconics back together. I mean, they've done it before with the APA and the Dudleys. They would split them up, put them back together. The Hardys did it. I mean, it's not like, so tag teams split and get back together all the time. It wouldn't have been the end of the world for them to do that. I'm shocked. I still can't believe it. But they'll be back. They'll be back. They may have a nice run in AEW, a nice run in Impact, and come back even bigger and better.
Well, that's what Drew McIntyre did, right? That's what Bobby Lashley did. Bobby Lashley left WWE. I can't remember if he was fired or not, but
he was gone 10 years. He left.
And now,
it was weird.
And he had a hell of a run in Impact. I never really knew the run that Bobby Lashley had in Impact until recently. I went back and checked some of it out, which, interesting enough, MVP was always with him when he won the title. Yeah,
I hadn't known that.
I didn't know that either.
You may have told me, or somebody. I did, because I never really followed Impact. I mean, I followed. I would know somewhat of what was going on and who was there, and the champions and all that stuff, but not really following exactly the storyline. So I never knew that. That is interesting, though, and it makes sense why they would have put them together in WWE, because they're perfect together.
Yeah, and if Bobby Lashley can be gone 10 years, come back and win the WWE Championship, Drew McIntyre terminated, right? Was in 3MB, was doing nothing, comes back, multi-time WWE Champion. I think, to your point, the Iconics have a long career.
I mean, look at Jinder Mahal. He didn't really go anywhere. He did some independence, but he totally transformed his body, came back, and became champion, which was a huge deal when it happened. So stranger things have happened.
Nevertheless, it's going to be an interesting time for all of those that were released. But, to kind of button up the topic around the trash gate, I'm glad that Mickie James, at the very least, voiced her opinion and caused a difference.
Yeah, me too. And I'm glad Carano's gone.
You never want to see anybody take their belongings that way, right? Get shipped out that way. It's
just not a good look.
Not a good look for WWE either. So,
no.
Bravo to Triple H and Stephanie. I knew that this would all come back to Hunter. Bravo to Hunter for taking the initiative, taking the horns, and causing change in WWE. That's my Triple H plug for the evening.
There you go.
So, all right. Well, this has been a great show, Fred. Thanks so much for joining today. Guys, of course, as always, please check out all of our content. You can catch us on our website, TruExactRadio.com. We have some really nice merchandise up there. Buy a shirt, buy a hat, buy a mask, whatever it is, coffee mug. We got plenty of material. Plenty of merch, as they say, on the table there. So show some love. Show some love. Our website, like I mentioned, TruExactRadio.com. You can also catch all of our shows on YouTube, the TruExact channel, of course, TruExact Radio channel, I should say, Spotify, iTunes, the podcast app for iPhones, anywhere that you get any type of podcast. We'll be back next week to talk a little bit more wrestling. We'll be breaking down, hopefully, Blood and Guts, as well as maybe what happens this Friday night with the big Roman versus Daniel Bryan match. Hopefully our buddy Nick Ferrantino will join us. I think he's a little afraid to see me after those comments he made last week about me, or 2 weeks ago, about me being in Tampa. So catch the fallout of me and Nick on air doing the verbal sparring here. Guys, as always, appreciate the love and support. Make sure also, too, I would be remiss if I say check out all of our shows under the TruExact platform. We have a great plethora of content. Anyone that likes any type of sports, fantasy betting, sharp bets, and fantasy stats is your show. The TruExact Radio show, hosted by TruExact Scott himself. He's always got some really great guests on there. Check those episodes out, as well as Brian, who helps produce the show, has his show, Random University. Some really good content on there as well. Guys, thanks so much. Fred, thanks for your time today, sir, and I'll see you next week. Pleasure.